CEO struck pregnant black wife at restaurant. The chef was her Navy SEAL brother. The restaurant's glow shattered in an instant. A sound, sharp, cruel, rang louder than the storm outside, freezing every laugh mid-breath. Through towering glass panes, Monterey's waves hurled themselves against the shore, their fury echoing the violence inside. A CEO in a pristine charcoal suit had just struck his wife, 8 months pregnant, radiant in a coral dress that shimmered with grace. Her hand rose to her cheek, skin flushed from the blow, the other instinctively shielding the fragile life beneath her heart. Gasps knifed through the silence, forks hovered mid-air, and glasses trembled against porcelain. No one moved. Eyes darted. Phones lifted, the entire room holding its breath as if afraid to break the spell. She stood there, trembling yet unbroken, her gaze blazing hotter than the storm. The man opposite her smoothed his cufflinks, arrogance dripping like poison, as though nothing had happened. Outside, thunder cracked, nature itself roaring in protest. Inside, the crowd stared, each heartbeat louder than the next, knowing this night would not end as it began. Somewhere beyond the dining hall, a shadow waited, watching, listening, ready to strike back. What secret connection ties the kitchens? Silence to the violence at this table? Who will rise when money, power, and cruelty collide under the gaze of a horrified crowd? This is not just dinner. This is the beginning of a reckoning. And what happens next will shake every soul watching. Stay, because justice is closer than anyone dares to believe. Monterey wore a tempest like a crown that night, rain stitching the sky while the Pacific pummeled the rocks beyond a wall of glass. Inside La Sirena, light pooled across marble, refracting from crystal pendants onto white roses arranged with fastidious care. Silverware gleamed like narrow blades under candles, scattering tiny stars across linen. The restaurant thrummed with restrained glamour. A pianist coaxed velvet notes from a baby grand, servers glided with choreographed ease, and conversation rose and fell like surf under a bruised horizon. Amara Wilson settled at a corner table, with a view of the storm. Her coral dress flowed over her 8-month belly, fabric moving like a warm tide against her skin. A delicate necklace lay at her throat, a small gold shell catching the lamplight whenever she turned. Her smile held a private brightness, the kind kindled by a future imagined in vivid strokes. Midnight feedings, gentle albums of lullabies, quiet Sunday walks along dunes after church, a home where patience outlasted weather. She sat with her back straight, breathing deep, one hand resting over the child who curved her silhouette. Amara's belief in love was not naive. It had been tested by layoffs, relocations, and bruising deadlines that stretched Ethan's hours, until they squeaked. Yet she held to it with a steadiness learned from faith and family, a compass aligned even when storms pressed hard. Ethan Caldwell arrived in a tailored charcoal suit that fit like a verdict. His tie knotted with surgical precision, cufflinks ticking with discreet prestige, hair disciplined into an executive wave. He kissed the air near her cheek, flashed the room a pleasant smile, then pulled out his chair with the smooth economy of someone accustomed to space parting before him. To the nearest table, he was the picture of success. A man whose calendar ruled entire corridors, whose voice could greenlight budgets and bend schedules into compliance. Yet at the edges of his charm hovered a restless current. Small twitches. At the mouth when a server delayed a plate, a split-second narrowing of the eyes when laughter from another booth grew unruly, an impatience sanded down but not banished. Isaiah Turner worked in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, apron tied with the sailor's knot he had learned long before he handled chef's knives. People in Monterey knew him as the quiet force behind La Sirena's clean flavors, a man who coaxed brightness from citrus and depth from bones roasted slowly. Few diners realized the breadth of his older life, the discipline forged during long nights on foreign coasts where sand crawled into sockets and orders whispered through radios cut the dark like wire. He kept watch on the dining room through. The pass, eyes quick without seeming anxious, hands steady over a pan snapping with butter. The storm, the glass, the silver, the roses, everything entered his awareness and sorted into calm piles. He knew Amara's posture without seeing her face. He recognized the careful way she cradled her belly whenever she shifted. He also knew Ethan's posture, which read like a press release, polished, composed, shaped for optics. Outside, waves collided with the breakwater, spray needling the windows, each impact setting a faint tremor through the panes. Laughter rose, soft as steam. The scent of grilled halibut drifted from the open kitchen, braided with lemon zest and fennel pollen. A server floated past with a tower of oysters, their shells cradling cold stars. Amara traced the edge of her water glass, condensation beading under her fingertips. "Let's share the sea base," she said, voice warm, almost shy, as though proposing a small truce. "It's gentle on my stomach." Ethan opened the menu and read without reading. "The chef's tasting is the standard tonight," he replied, light tone barely skimming over a steel undertone. "It's 6 courses. Impresses clients." "We don't have clients with us," she said. "Habit," he answered, still smiling. "And I've had a day, Mara. Allow me one indulgence." She folded her hands over her belly, thumb circling absent-mindedly. "Of course, I only worry about strong spices. The baby reacts." His smile thinned. "You've mentioned that." She let the remark drift across the table and vanish like foam. Patience, she reminded herself. The storm outside would pass. So would this mood. He loved her. He had promised to be present more, to close his laptop earlier, to leave a little of himself at the office instead of bringing every fire home. People backslide when stressed. Redemption takes practice. A waiter arrived, posture regal, pen overtly quiet. Water poured in silent arcs. Bread arrived warm under a linen napkin. A slender vase of white roses breathed cool fragrance between them. Ethan asked for the tasting menu without looking up, then added a note about pacing because he preferred tempo. Amara asked for an extra pillow for her chair and the sea bass a la carte, just in case. The server nodded with kindness and retreated. Ethan's fingers drummed a measured beat, then stilled when he caught himself. "I'll try to split anything that works for you," he said, as though generosity were a strategy. She watched a couple near the window share a joke, their shoulders touching. "Thank you," she said, and meant it, though a sliver of ache nested beneath the gratitude. She pressed it down, smoothing the dress over her belly until the color shone like sunset on tide pools. Isaiah slid a pan to a cooler flame, heart rate steady. He trained new cooks to season boldly and speak softly, yet stand firm when quality tried to drift. Through the pass, he could read tables, anniversaries, proposals, reconciliations, arguments disguised as conversations about wine. His sister's table read like weather forming, pressure falling, stillness gathering energy. He cataloged it and returned to his station, yet a filament of attention stayed tethered. Ethan launched into a tidy précis of his day, a board meeting that ran long, a director who missed targets, a call with investors that demanded a polished narrative. He described numbers the way some people recount sports scores, brisk and bloodless. Amara listened, smiling at the right places, filing detail after detail because that was how she loved, by remembering. When he paused, she offered a story about the baby's response to music during the drive, how a cello line had calmed a sudden cramp. She laughed softly at the memory and touched her belly, then noticed how his attention drifted toward the bar, when a glass shattered and was quickly swept away. His phone lit the table with a pale square. He flipped it face down and covered it with a palm, a courteous gesture that still carried the weight of the device's presence, like a secret crouching under cloth. "You look beautiful," he said then, genuinely, eyes softening. "That color was made for you." Warmth touched her features. "Thank you," she whispered. She reached for his hand. He let her keep it for a beat, then withdrew to adjust his napkin. The moment smudged, but did not vanish. Silver winked, candles breathed, and murmurs gathered like low tide. Outside, the surf pounded the breakwater, testing the glass. Inside, patience and pride arranged their pieces, waiting for the next move. Neither of them wished to name tonight here. The room's hum fractured with a single sound, a brutal strike that landed like lightning. Ethan's palm whipped across Amara's face, the sharp crack silencing forks, laughter, and music in one devastating instant. Crystal trembled. Glasses rang faintly, and even the storm outside seemed to pause before resuming its relentless assault on Monterey's shore. Her head snapped sideways, coral fabric rippling as her body jerked, one hand flying instinctively to shield the unborn child. Beneath her heart, the other pressed against her reddened cheek. Shock filled her eyes, wide and glistening, reflecting betrayal deeper than the sting itself. 8 months of hope swelled in her belly, and she clutched it with trembling fingers, determined to protect the fragile life even while pain burned her skin. The pianist froze mid-chord, his hands suspended over ivory keys, silence rolling outward in waves. Diners gasped, knives stilled, soup spoons halted halfway to lips, conversations evaporating into stunned air. Someone coughed and then nothing. Only the roar of the ocean pounding against glass, its thunder merging with the throb in her cheek. A server dropped a bottle of wine, red spilling like blood across white linen, spreading quickly, staining. Roses placed for elegance now twisted into symbols of violence. Cameras rose, hesitant first, then bold, tiny lenses blinking judgment, light from phones flickering like fireflies in a storm. Murmurs swelled. "Did you see that? She's pregnant. Unbelievable." Outrage mixing with disbelief. Pity intertwining with fury. Children clung to mothers, elderly patrons shook their heads, businessmen whispered into devices, already framing posts to capture the scandal before dessert. Amara's breath hitched, chest rising sharply, her lips quivering though no sound escaped. She wanted to cry, wanted to demand an explanation, wanted to disappear, yet above all, she wanted to keep her baby safe. Ethan sat back down calmly, straightening his cuff, adjusting his tie with deliberate arrogance, pretending nothing unusual had happened. His expression carried entitlement, as if her silence was expected, as though dominance in public was his right. The arrogance thickened the air, turning admiration once directed at his polished image into loathing. Diners leaned closer, compelled to witness, unwilling to pretend normalcy when cruelty played out so brazenly. Amara's eyes shimmered, unshed tears balancing on the edge, lashes trembling. She could still taste the metallic tang at the corner of her lip, feel the heat radiating from her cheek, yet inside her heart fractured harder than flesh. She had believed in love, had trusted his promises, had given him years of devotion, and now all that faith crumbled under one strike witnessed by strangers. The storm outside intensified, lightning clawing the horizon, thunder shaking panes, rain hammering like fists against glass, mirroring chaos within. A woman at a nearby table reached forward as if to comfort Amara, then withdrew, caught between compassion and fear. A man muttered angrily under his breath, fists clenched but body glued to his chair. Servers exchanged glances, uncertain whether to intervene or retreat, torn between hospitality and justice. Phones rose higher, recording every detail. the red cheek, the trembling hands, the arrogance of a man untouched by shame. Amara shifted, her palm pressing firmly against her belly, whispering silently to the life inside, promising protection. She swallowed hard, voice locked beneath layers of dignity, unwilling to collapse though her body trembled. Ethan leaned, closer, lips curling in a whisper too soft for most to hear, yet venomous enough to tighten her throat. His words were lost in the storm's crash, but the cruelty on his face spoke louder than sound. Her gaze drifted upward, meeting chandeliers above, their crystals fractured into dozens of shimmering fragments. Each spark reminded her of pieces of herself scattered across the table, yet beneath the wreckage a flame stirred, faint but unyielding. She glanced around, faces frozen, some wet with sympathetic tears, others hard with anger, still others alight with curiosity. Every diner felt bound to the moment, unwilling to release their gaze from the injustice unfolding so openly. Outside, waves surged higher, spraying mist that streaked glass panes with rivulets, as though the sea itself wept in outrage. Amara steadied her breath, shoulders rising slowly, forcing composure though her heart pounded like the drums outside. One hand remained on her child, the other lowering from her cheek, red mark burning bright under soft lighting. She blinked, hard, tears finally sliding down, not only from pain but from recognition that something precious had shattered, trust broken in a way visible to everyone. Forks clinked faintly as one diner placed his cutlery down in protest, refusing to eat after such violence. Another woman whispered to a companion, "How could he? She's carrying his child." Someone else muttered, "Money makes men think they can do anything." Each voice rose like distant thunder, building into a chorus of condemnation, yet no one moved to stand. Fear of status, fear of confrontation, fear of consequence pinned them down, though their eyes screamed rebellion. Ethan leaned back, sipping, water with practiced calm, ignoring the storm inside and out, reveling in control. Amara turned slightly, body trembling but spine refusing to bow, eyes staring into the storm beyond the glass. She let the ocean's fury mirror her own, each crash promising that nothing stays calm forever. Even seas break into tempests when pressed too long. Her lips parted finally, a fragile breath escaping, barely audible, but carrying the weight of heartbreak. Ever felt heartbreak in public? Share your thoughts below. The words, whispered like prayer, slipped into the silence heavy as stone, reaching not only those present, but everyone who would later watch through glowing screens. Diners flinched, realizing her pain was not private, that her humiliation had become collective memory, her suffering etched into every witness's conscience. The storm outside screamed agreement, thunder rolling across a dark sky, lightning splitting the night into jagged shards. Amara sat straighter, refusing to collapse, hand never leaving the unborn child, protecting life while carrying pain. The moment stretched, air thick with judgment, tension unbroken, every eye waiting for the next movement that would decide whether justice would remain locked in silence or begin to rise with the tide. From the shadows of the kitchen, Isaiah Turner froze mid-motion, a chef's knife still glinting in his hand, the blade hovering above a board of sliced fennel. The sound of flesh struck by flesh had cut through sizzling pans, through the constant hiss of oil, through the rhythmic cadence of orders being called. He didn't need to look long. He knew that sound the way soldiers recognize gunfire in distant hills. His eyes locked on the dining room beyond the swinging doors, and there she was, his sister, Amara, sitting rigid, her hand cradling her belly, her face reddened by the slap. Every nerve in his body flared, instincts sharpened by years of Navy, SEAL training igniting at once. His chest tightened, breaths deepening, muscles tightening into coils ready to strike. The crowded kitchen blurred, staff bustling, flames licking pans, but all he could hear was the echo of cruelty replaying again and again, amplified by the roar of the ocean hammering against Monterey's shore. Isaiah was tall, broad-shouldered, his frame built from endurance trials in deserts and oceans, the kind of body honed not for vanity, but for survival. His movements carried a discipline that spoke of danger met and defeated, of nights crouched in silence waiting for signals, of storms weathered far from home. Beneath that hardened exterior, though, lived the vow he made when they were children, that no harm would ever touch Amara without him standing in the way. Memories surged now, unbidden. A teenage Isaiah stepping between her and a school bully, a young sailor writing letters promising to keep her safe even from across the world, the moment he held her crying after their parents' funeral, whispering that she would never be alone. That vow roared awake with the slap he had just witnessed. His knuckles whitened around the handle of the knife, but he set it down slowly, deliberately, breathing through fury as he straightened. The kitchen staff noticed his stillness, sensed the gravity in the way he stared through the pass. A young line cook opened his mouth to speak, but Isaiah raised one hand slightly, and silence fell, respect filling the air around him. He untied his apron, fingers steady though his pulse thundered, and laid it across the counter. Every sound seemed louder now, the scrape of silverware stopping, the whisper of scandal rippling through the dining room, the clatter of someone's glass tipped by a trembling hand. Phones rose, catching not only Amara's pain, but Ethan's arrogance, sitting smug, sipping water as though violence were a business transaction. That smugness stoked Isaiah's fury further, the storm inside him growing as wild as the one outside. Diners whispered, some covering mouths, some openly filming, their eyes flicking between Amara's trembling form and Ethan's cold detachment. "He hit her!" a voice hissed. "She's pregnant," another gasped. Anger rippled like fire catching dry brush, yet no one moved, paralyzed by fear of power, by the wealth sewn into Ethan's name. Isaiah saw it all, the pass framing the stage like a television, and his jaw clenched. Every SEAL instinct told him to evaluate, plan, and strike only when success was sure, but this was not an operation measured by tactics alone. This was blood, family, dignity, desecrated in public view. The waves outside battered harder, spray streaking tall glass, lightning clawing skies in jagged bursts. Thunder rolled through the restaurant, indistinguishable from the pounding in Isaiah's head. He inhaled deeply, steadying his heartbeat the way he had on missions where calm meant survival. Rage demanded violence, but training demanded precision. He could not fail her, not here. He pictured Amara as a child, laughing as they built forts from blankets, trusting him to guard imaginary castles. He pictured her crying into his shoulder when heartbreak first broke her in college, and him swearing silently to tear apart anyone who dared repeat that pain. Tonight, those vows converged, demanding action. Ethan leaned back casually, wiping condensation from his glass with a thumb, ignoring the crowd's disgust. He exuded entitlement, the air of a man untouchable, cloaked in money's illusion of invulnerability. His expression held irritation that anyone dared react, as though the entire room should have accepted his cruelty as natural order. Isaiah's nostrils flared. His hands curled into fists at his sides, the tension in his forearms visible even beneath rolled sleeves. He felt the kitchen floor vibrate faintly under his boots as another wave hammered rock. The sea outside mirrored him perfectly, relentless, unbroken, furious. Servers hesitated at the dining room's edges, uncertain whether to step forward or vanish into safety. One manager wrung his hands, weighing policies against conscience. Diners leaned toward companions, some whispering, others openly condemning, phones glowing brighter. Children looked on with confusion, sensing wrongness, but not yet understanding the cruelty displayed. Amara sat silent, eyes glistening, hand firm on her belly. Isaiah could read her thoughts without words. Fear, heartbreak, resilience. He had seen that resilience before, but never under such humiliation. A memory sliced through him, sand whipping across his face during deployment, teammates shouting above gunfire, the knowledge that no retreat was possible. He had found strength then, pulled from depths he hadn't known existed, and tonight demanded the same resolve. His protective instincts, trained and sharpened by war, surged forward like a tide. The kitchen walls felt too tight, the ceiling too low. His body demanded motion. He pulled off his gloves, tossing them aside with finality. His stare never left Ethan. Around him, younger cooks stepped back, sensing change in the air, the way animals sense earthquakes before humans notice tremors. The restaurant's soundtrack had shifted from elegance to dread, from laughter to murmurs, from music to silence punctuated by storm. Every element aligned, the sea, the thunder, the rising crowd outrage, mirroring Isaiah's gathering wrath. He inhaled, exhaled, every muscle braced, every nerve sharpened. His time was near. The door to the dining room swayed on its hinges as servers passed, and in that brief gap, Isaiah caught Amara's eyes. Even from across the space, even through candlelight, he saw the tear on her cheek glistening. Her gaze met his for a heartbeat, and in it, he read 1,000 words. Help me, protect me, remember your vow. He nodded once, imperceptibly, an affirmation, carried through storm and silence. She straightened slightly, drawing strength from that silent exchange. Ethan leaned closer to her, lips moving in another venomous whisper, arrogance thickening his tone, oblivious to the danger building behind. Swinging doors. He adjusted his jacket as though preparing for dessert, utterly unaware that justice crouched in shadows, sharpening its blade. Diners sensed the shift before it happened. Conversations hushed further, anticipation thickening like an audience. Aware that a performance had reached its turning point. Eyes flicked toward the kitchen, to the tall figure standing motionless in shadow, apron gone, arms crossed, gaze burning. Phones turned in that direction too, lenses eager to catch the moment justice stepped into frame. Whispers spread fast. That's the chef. Isn't he her brother? Look at him. Something's coming. Isaiah rolled his shoulders once, loosening tension, the way he used to before breaching doors overseas. He placed one heavy boot forward, weight shifting with finality. Every instinct screamed that timing was everything, that momentum once unleashed could not be undone. But hesitation was gone. This was family. This was his sister. No seal ever. Abandoned a comrade, and Amara was far more than that. She was blood, his first mission, his forever duty. The sea outside crashed, spray exploding against glass in white fury. Thunder shook the chandeliers, crystal singing faintly under vibrations. Lightning split the horizon, painting the room in ghostly flashes. Isaiah's jaw tightened, and he pushed through the door, shadows breaking as he stepped forward into the charged silence. The air itself shifted, as though the storm outside had finally breached the walls carried in by his presence. Every eye turned. Phones lifted higher. Ethan's smirk faltered for the first time, sensing a force approaching that no money could. Buy off. Seen someone stand up to injustice? Drop a comment. The words floated into the heavy silence, not shouted, but resonant, carried by the storm's echo, embedding themselves into every witness's conscience. Diners inhaled collectively, aware that history within those walls was about to tilt. Amara's lips parted, whispering his name barely audible, yet filled with relief, with belief. Isaiah's boots struck marble, each step echoing like a drumbeat of war. The storm raged, the sea roared, and justice marched closer with every stride. Isaiah pushed through the swinging doors with force that rattled hinges, apron discarded, boots striking marble in heavy beats that echoed like war drums through La Serena's silent hall. Diners parted instinctively, chairs scraping, conversations dying mid-breath as his broad frame cut a path toward the corner table. Candlelight flickered across his stern face, shadows deepening the sharp planes carved by discipline and years of battle. His eyes burned with controlled fury. Every step, radiating authority earned from nights when hesitation meant death. Conversations evaporated. The pianist closed the lid on trembling keys, and phones lifted higher, tiny screens recording history unfolding in real time. The storm outside raged, waves pounding against rocks, thunder rolling through glass panes, as if the ocean itself marched beside him. Ethan glanced up, smirk faltering as he finally registered the force moving toward him. His wine glass shook faintly in his hand, liquid rippling like nerves betrayed by arrogance. He tried to mask it with a crooked smile, but sweat already pricked at his temple. He straightened in his chair, tugging his jacket, adjusting cuffs, rehearsing composure that cracked under Isaiah's unrelenting glare. Diners leaned forward, breath caught, knowing the confrontation had begun. Isaiah stopped at the edge of the table, boots firm on marble, shoulders squared. His voice emerged low, lethal, vibrating through the silence. "Step away from my sister." The words cut sharper than knives, a command no one doubted would be enforced if ignored. The crowd inhaled collectively, tension crackling through. Chandeliers, air electric with storm. Ethan's fingers tightened around the stem of his glass, knuckles whitening, but the tremor betrayed him. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a shallow exhale emerged. Amara lifted her tear-filled eyes, lips parting as she whispered his name. Isaiah. Her voice cracked, equal parts relief and fear, a fragile plea wrapped in trust. She pressed, her hand harder against her belly, shoulders trembling, but hope sparked through the terror as she recognized her brother's presence. Her protector, the vow made flesh. Her whisper carried across the room, stirring whispers among diners. Phones flashed, capturing the moment, light bouncing against silver and crystal, illuminating Isaiah's towering stance beside her. Ethan forced a laugh, brittle and hollow. "This is a misunderstanding," he muttered, raising his free hand in a weak attempt at control. His glass rattled against the table as he set it down, stem clinking against porcelain. "Sit down. Don't embarrass yourself." His tone lacked conviction, arrogance draining with every syllable. Diners sneered, their disbelief audible, their disdain written across glares aimed at him. Isaiah leaned closer, his frame shadowing Ethan entirely, voice steady as thunder. "You struck her in front of this room, pregnant. And you dare speak of embarrassment?" His words carved through the hall, each syllable dripping with righteous fury. The ocean outside roared louder, spray smearing tall glass, lightning flashing, thunder shaking chandeliers. Diners gasped at his blunt condemnation, some cheering under their breath, others recording tighter angles, capturing every second. Ethan's facade cracked. His lips quivered as he reached for water, glass slipping slightly before catching it with fumbling fingers. He sipped, Adam's apple bobbing nervously. His composure shattered further when Isaiah's hand slammed against the table. Silver rattling, glasses tipping, roses trembling in their vase. Diners jumped at the sound, hearts pounding as adrenaline spiked through the room. Phones caught it all, screens lighting brighter, flashes exploding like fireworks. Amara reached for Isaiah's arm, whispering through tears, "Please don't." Her voice carried desperation but also profound relief, knowing he was here, knowing she was not alone. Her grip on his sleeve grounded him, channeling rage into precision, fury into discipline. He placed his other hand gently over hers, eyes softening for her alone before sharpening again toward Ethan. Ethan's eyes darted around, seeking allies. Among diners, among staff, but found only judgment, only condemnation in the glares surrounding him. Murmurs rose louder. Unbelievable. She deserves better. Coward. His chest heaved faster, sweat dampening his collar. Glass, trembling again as he fumbled for control. Yet Isaiah's stance stripped him of power, leaving him small despite wealth, weak despite position. Isaiah spoke again, deeper now, finality ringing in his tone. You will never raise a hand to her again, not while I breathe. His declaration thundered louder than a storm, carrying authority forged in war and family bonds unbreakable. Diners erupted in hushed gasps, some clapping quietly, others whispering encouragement, the entire room transformed into witnesses of justice rising against cruelty. Ethan's lips parted as though to argue, but his voice failed. The tremor in his hand betrayed fear, his gaze flicking from Isaiah's hardened stare to the storm raging beyond the glass. He shifted in his seat, posture collapsing under pressure, confidence draining like wine spilled on marble. His arrogance, once armor, shattered beneath eyes that saw through it all. Amara whispered again, softer, her tears flowing freely now, but mixed with gratitude. Thank you, she mouthed, her breath catching, eyes closing briefly as relief washed through her battered heart. She leaned slightly toward him, feeling his presence as a shield, her body finally loosening after minutes locked in tension. The room watched silently, every phone recording her whisper, every diner etching the moment into memory. Isaiah remained still, an immovable force towering over Ethan, storm raging behind him, justice embodied in muscle and will. The restaurant vibrated with unspoken energy, every witness leaning forward unable to blink. Flashes from cameras reflected in glass, thunder rolling through the ceiling, waves colliding with unrelenting fury. The confrontation had reached its peak, and the air itself seemed to hold breath for the next heartbeat. Believe in protecting family? Let us know below. The words rippled through silence, not shouted but carried on the storm, embedding themselves into the hearts of every listener, every viewer who would later watch this moment through glowing screens. Diners nodded, some raising fists, others whispering agreement, united in recognition of the truth displayed before them. Ethan's glass slipped, finally, tipping, spilling crimson across linen, spreading like guilt uncontained. He flinched, but made no move to retrieve it, his hands trembling too much to try. His eyes darted again toward the doors, searching for rescue, but none came. The crowd had chosen its side. The storm had chosen its champion, his empire of arrogance. Crumbled in silence, Amara pressed her cheek against Isaiah's arm, whispering once more, her voice steadier now. You came. His hand brushed her shoulder, protective, constant, a silent vow renewed. He stood tall, unyielding, while Ethan shrank into his chair, trapped under the gaze of 100 eyes, and the judgment of the sea itself roaring outside. Lightning flashed once more, thunder rolled, and La Sirena's walls shook with the weight of justice finally arrived. Isaiah's hand moved with sudden force, fingers clamping around Ethan's glass before the man could react. In one fluid motion, pressure built, stem groaned, then shattered with a piercing crack that ricocheted through La Sirena like a gunshot. Crimson wine sprayed across the table, splattering porcelain, dripping down Ethan's cuff, staining his perfect suit with an indelible mark. The sound silenced even the murmurs, leaving only the storm outside to roar. Waves colliding against. Raucous thunder rolled through windows. The fragments rained onto linen, sharp edges glinting under chandeliers, a warning embodied in broken crystal. Ethan recoiled, chair screeching back, eyes wide, breathing shallow. His polished mask fell, replaced by a face flushed with fear and disbelief. He looked around desperately, searching for allies among patrons, scanning for sympathy, authority, someone willing to intervene. Yet everywhere he turned, eyes glared back with condemnation. Diners who once envied his power now judged him with disgust. Some shook their heads, some whispered furiously, others raised their phones higher, capturing every detail of his unraveling. His empire of appearances dissolved under collective judgment. Amara sat frozen, hands trembling on her rounded belly, fingers pressing protectively over the fragile life inside. Hope flickered as she watched Isaiah stand tall, his frame unyielding, but fear clung to her still. She wanted her child safe, wanted the violence to end, yet knew danger hovered inches away. Her eyes brimmed with tears, caught between dread of escalation and gratitude that her brother stood as a shield. Her breath came quick, chest rising fast, shoulders shaking as she leaned closer to him, silently pleading for control even while relief poured through every tear. The room buzzed. Alive again, murmurs swelling into a tide of outrage. Did you see that? He deserved it. Finally, voices layered, anger rising, empathy threading through whispers. Silver rattled faintly on plates as diners shifted, tension rippling across the hall. Phones glowed brighter, capturing shattered glass, spilled wine, Isaiah's clenched jaw, Ethan's shrinking posture. Flashes illuminated faces, freezing the moment in endless loops for the world to see. Ethan attempted to speak, words tumbling awkwardly. This is insane. He's threatening me. But his voice cracked, trembling with weakness, drawing. No sympathy. The crowd's disbelieving laughter cut sharper than knives, stripping him further of authority. His eyes darted toward management, but staff stood still, uncertainty melting into quiet agreement with Isaiah's stance. Even servers, trained to appease wealthy clients, looked at Ethan with disdain, no longer afraid to reveal where their respect truly lay. Isaiah leaned closer, voice low, steady, dangerous. That sound is a warning. Next time it won't be glass. His tone carried the weight of battlefields, every word dripping with certainty, leaving no doubt he meant it. The storm outside surged, waves battering harder, spray streaking across, tall windows as though nature itself applauded. Thunder cracked, vibrating crystal chandeliers, aligning with Isaiah's dominance. Ethan flinched, sweat streaking down his temple. He straightened his jacket nervously, attempted to muster composure, but his hands trembled visibly, betraying his collapse. He reached out weakly, gesturing at nearby tables as if begging strangers to support him. None moved. Diners stared, with narrowed eyes, arms crossed, brows furrowed, united in judgment. A man muttered audibly, "Coward." A woman whispered, "He should be ashamed." Another diner recorded closer, phone nearly inches from his face, immortalizing his humiliation. Amara whispered Isaiah's name, her voice breaking, fragile as glass yet filled with devotion. "Please. Careful." He looked down briefly, eyes softening only for her, then returned to Ethan with steely focus. His stance remained immovable, shoulders broad, hands steady, gaze locked like iron sights on target. Ethan backed further, chair legs scraping against marble, bumping into another. Table, upsetting plates, clattering silver onto the floor. Diners gasped, not from sympathy but satisfaction at watching arrogance reduced to panic. The once untouchable executive now cowered, movements frantic, breath ragged. His empire of polished control dissolved in front of cameras, his downfall, sealed in real time. The storm's fury mirrored Isaiah's presence. Lightning ripped across the sky, illuminating the room in harsh flashes, thunder rumbling deep as a growl. The ocean churned relentlessly, every crash against rocks echoing through glass, as if the sea itself demanded justice. The air smelled of spilled wine, salt spray, fear, and something new, courage awakening in every witness. Isaiah straightened fully, towering, his silhouette framed against lightning beyond windows. You thought no one would stop you, he growled, voice vibrating through silence. You thought money shielded you. Tonight you learn what true power looks like. His words resonated, heavy with conviction, searing into Ethan's trembling form. The crowd erupted softly, whispers spreading like fire. Yes. Finally, justice. Some clapped discreetly, others raised phones higher, recording every second, unwilling to miss history unfolding. Amara's tears streamed freely, her shoulders trembling, but her gaze steadied as she watched Ethan wilt under her brother's dominance. For the first time that night, she felt safety return, fragile, but real, woven from his presence. Her hands remained over her belly, protective yet calmer now, as though even the child inside sensed the shift of power. Ethan swallowed hard, words stumbling. You'll regret this, he hissed weakly, but his tone held no strength. The statement hung limp, mocked silently by every glare surrounding him. He had no allies left, only witnesses eager to see him fall. His threats dissolved into emptiness, drowned by the ocean's roar and Isaiah's unwavering stance. Isaiah's hand hovered briefly over shards of broken crystal before curling into a fist, not raised, but steady, radiating restraint. His fury was not reckless. It was precision, honed discipline directed only at the guilty. That balance terrified Ethan more than violence itself, because it showed complete control. This was not rage spiraling. This was justice measured. Diners leaned. Further, some recording close-ups, others whispering commentary for audiences waiting online. Children stared wide-eyed, learning in that instant that cruelty could be confronted, that silence was not the only answer. Elderly patrons nodded solemnly, pride etched across faces, recognizing bravery rising against arrogance. The room had transformed from restaurant to stage of reckoning, every soul bound by the same truth. Isaiah's gaze never wavered. His voice fell to a growl that carried across marble and glass. You will never touch her again, understand? Ethan nodded shakily, lips too dry to form a reply. His chest heaved, breath shallow, hands twitching against the table's edge, body shrinking into the seat. The once commanding CEO was reduced to cornered prey. The storm punctuated the declaration with another crash, waves slamming rock, spray bursting across windows. The sea's rhythm merged with Isaiah's words, relentless, inevitable. Amara exhaled, shakily, relief flooding her chest. Her tears mixed with strength, gratitude shining as she whispered again, "Thank you." Her voice carried beyond their table, pulling sympathy from diners, reminding everyone that this was not a spectacle alone, but lived pain, endured, and survived. Isaiah placed his hand gently over hers, anchoring her, silent promise renewed. Then, his eyes shifted back, hard as steel, ensuring Ethan understood this confrontation was far from finished. The crowd remained quiet, reverent, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Ever seen justice unfold? Share your story below. The words rolled into silence like a commandment, drawing nods, murmurs of agreement, and commitment to spread what they had witnessed. Phones captured it, recording not just confrontation but transformation. Fear replaced by defiance, cruelty crushed by family, arrogance stripped of power. Ethan slumped, sweat dripping, jacket stained, hands trembling, empire reduced to rubble, beneath the relentless gaze of his brother, who stood as the storm itself. And outside, waves roared, thunder clapped, lightning split the sky, nature aligning with justice in its purest form. Security burst through the main entrance, black suits cutting across marble, radios crackling faintly as boots struck the polished floor. Their strides were urgent yet uncertain, caught between duty to patrons and loyalty to management. Hesitation, painting their movements as they slowed upon reaching the scene. The sight of Isaiah towering over Ethan froze them. Here stood a man radiating unshakable authority, his frame squared, voice heavy with righteous power, while Ethan sat crumpled, jacket stained, hands trembling, dignity drained. The guards exchanged wary glances, unsure whether protocol demanded, protecting the executive or recognizing justice already unfolding. Diners shifted closer, the room vibrating with collective expectation, eyes darting between uniformed men and the confrontation at the corner table. Ethan seized the moment, rising, abruptly, arms flailing in a desperate attempt to reassert control. "Arrest him! He assaulted me! Do you know who I am?" His voice cracked, brittle, echoing off chandeliers without conviction. He jabbed a finger toward Isaiah, hoping authority could shield him once more. Sweat streaked his temple, tie loosened, collar damp, arrogance now masquerading as panic. His words fell hollow, drowned by the storm outside and the judgment filling every face surrounding him. Isaiah's reply came steady, unyielding. He stepped forward, his boots thudding like gavel strikes. His voice carried through the silence, deep as thunder. "Money won't save you tonight." The declaration reverberated across marble, rolling through the crowd like a wave, each syllable sharper than steel. Security halted mid-step, their bodies stiffening as if chains of conscience bound them. They looked at Ethan but saw no leader, no figure worth defending, only a man stripped of respect. Their gazes shifted toward Isaiah, reading the authority in his stance, the command in his presence, the truth vibrating in his words. Ethan's protests sputtered. "You'll regret this. My lawyers, my board." Yet every phrase dissolved into nervous stammers, drowned beneath the storm's echoes and Isaiah's immovable silence. His empire of influence collapsed in real time, shattering before witnesses who no longer feared his reach. Phones captured every second, lenses glowing brighter, flashes igniting corners of the hall. The world beyond those walls would soon know what unfolded here, and no fortune could erase it. Then it happened. Applause. It began softly, hesitant claps from a table near the window, then spread like wildfire. One by one, diners rose, palms meeting in thunderous rhythm, voices cheering, faces alive with vindication. Applause surged louder, filling the room with sound heavier than any ocean wave. Some shouted, "For her!" Others cried, "Enough!" The hall shook not from storm alone, but from the weight of unity, strangers binding together in support. Of Amara, their collective approval drowning Ethan's last remnants of pride. Amara lifted her tear-streaked face, shoulders trembling as she absorbed the sight. For so long she had carried burdens quietly, hiding cracks beneath smiles, believing patience might mend everything. Now she felt the tide shift, felt justice pour through the crowd, felt the world finally stand beside her. Her lips curved faintly, fragile yet radiant, a smile breaking through grief. Tears slid freely, but this time they blended with relief, washing pain from her heart. She reached across the table, her hand finding Isaiah's arm, gripping firmly as if anchoring her soul. To the brother who stood unyielding, the storm outside began to ease. Waves still struck rock, but less violently, as though even the sea understood resolution had arrived. Thunder rumbled softer, rain easing into a steady rhythm rather than a furious assault. Lightning flickered faintly, distant now, no longer, ripping the sky but illuminating gently, like a curtain falling at the end of a performance. Nature mirrored the hall, chaos fading, justice restoring balance. Security stepped back, lowering hands, eyes softening as they understood the choice was already made. None moved toward Isaiah, none dared touch him. Their radios crackled again, muffled voices asking for updates, but no words formed on their lips. They were witnesses now, not actors, swept into the same tide as the rest. Ethan stood alone, sweat, dripping, fists clenched loosely as though even his body no longer believed in the fight. Isaiah placed a steady hand on Amara's shoulder, his touch both shield and comfort. His expression softened briefly for her before hardening once more toward the man who had struck her. "Look around you," Isaiah said, voice calm yet filled with undeniable strength. "Every eye sees you for what you are. No lie, no check. No title will erase tonight. You wanted power, but true power is here, protecting, not destroying." The crowd erupted again, clapping, cheering, voices carrying her name. "Amara! Amara!" The chant grew, filling every corner, lifting her spirit higher, stitching back dignity piece by piece. She closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over. Her like waves turned gentle, a tide that carried hope instead of fear. She exhaled deeply for the first time that evening, breathing without trembling. Her hand rubbed her belly slowly, whispering silently to the child within that they were safe, that love had triumphed. Ethan tried once more to raise his voice, but the applause swallowed him. He shouted, but his words drowned beneath the rhythm of unity, his figure shrinking smaller under the weight of rejection. His shoulders sagged, his posture collapsing entirely, his empire of arrogance reduced to fragments no one wanted to gather. He looked around helplessly, eyes darting to security, to staff, to strangers, but found only condemnation. For the first time. He tasted true isolation. Isaiah remained still, his presence filling the hall, yet his focus stayed on his sister. "It's over," he whispered to her, voice steady, gentle, yet absolute. She nodded, tears spilling, fragile smile glowing, brighter through sorrow. That smile was not of victory alone, but of freedom, the kind that returns dignity stolen by cruelty. She leaned against his side, exhausted but safe, broken yet healing. The applause softened gradually, fading into murmurs of support, into nods, exchanged among strangers, into phones lowered slowly, satisfied that justice had been witnessed. The hall breathed again, the weight of tension lifting, the storm inside finally calming as the one outside followed. Rain softened to drizzle, thunder distant, ocean waves steady but no longer violent. Peace returned, fragile yet robust. Amara raised her head once more, gazing across the crowd. Every eye on her was kind, supportive, and proud. For the first time, she no longer felt humiliated but uplifted. She whispered almost to herself, "Thank you." Words directed at them all, carried on air heavy with sincerity. Strangers nodded, some wiping eyes, others clapping gently again. Isaiah looked at her, pride shining, vow renewed without words. Ethan, slumped, defeated entirely, his presence now a husk, his authority shattered. Security lingered nearby but did not move to restore him. Instead, they too looked at Amara, reading strength in her fragile smile, respect rising in their eyes. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. No wealth could reverse it. Tonight belonged to her, to Isaiah, to everyone who had stood silently yet chosen the side of justice. The storm outside calmed further, ocean waves rolling steadily, no longer, crashing violently, sky clearing faintly above dark water. La Sirena glowed softly again, candlelight steady, roses still fragrant though stained with wine, silver still shining though rattled. The restaurant breathed like a living being relieved of weight, as though it too had needed this resolution. Isaiah leaned toward her once more, whispering so only she heard, "You're free now." Amara nodded, fragile smile widening through tears, relief flooding her. For the first time that night, her dignity was intact again, shielded, restored. She clutched his hand, whispering, "I know." Justice had not come quietly. It had roared like the sea, cracked like lightning, shaken chandeliers, but now it left calm in its wake. And as the hall quieted, as the storm subsided, as applause dwindled into gentle silence, one truth remained carved forever. In marble and memory, love defended is stronger than cruelty, and dignity once broken can be rebuilt by courage, standing unflinching. Security finally advanced, no longer uncertain, their decision made as they closed around Ethan. His protests erupted again, louder but emptier, words spilling like broken glass across marble. "You can't do this! I built this place! I'll ruin every one of you!" Yet his voice no longer carried the weight it once did. It cracked, shrill, mocked by whispers threading through the hall. His tailored suit, once armor, now looked pitiful, jacket stained crimson by spilled wine, cufflinks dulled beneath sweat, fabric wrinkled from frantic movement. When two guards gripped his arms, dragging him back from the table, the illusion shattered completely. He stumbled, shoes squeaking against polished floor, hair falling loose, tie skewed. His once pristine image was gone, replaced by a spectacle of disgrace. Diners lifted phones higher, cameras recording every stumble, every futile twist, every curse muttered between clenched teeth. Flashes lit his face, highlighting fear etched deep where arrogance had lived. Some patrons leaned into frames, narrating quietly for audiences beyond, ensuring the downfall traveled further than these walls. The internet's judgment would be swift, merciless, and undeniable. Amara sat trembling, hands still clutching her belly, her breath shallow until security hauled Ethan several steps away. Then, as his shadow lifted from her, a shaky exhale escaped her chest, long and quivering, like storm winds finally passing. She closed her eyes briefly, shoulders sagging under release, before lifting her gaze. Her eyes found Isaiah's, locking, with his in a moment that said everything words could not. Gratitude shone, love glowed, relief trembled across her tear-streaked face. She whispered, "Thank you," the syllables catching but steady enough for him to hear. He answered with a nod, jaw tight, his hand pressing gently on her shoulder, anchoring her to safety. The crowd erupted into scattered cheers as Ethan flailed against guards, their grip unrelenting. Some diners clapped openly, others whistled, voices rising in chants of "Justice!" and "For her!" Strangers who had arrived as individuals now stood united, their collective support filling the room with warmth. Elderly couples smiled. Through tears, young patrons raised phones like torches of truth, and children clapped without fully understanding but sensing victory. Unity rippled across tables, strangers exchanging nods, solidarity binding them in shared witness of dignity. Restored, Ethan's struggles grew weaker as humiliation sank deeper. His gaze darted wildly, searching for sympathy, but found only lenses and contempt. Every angle captured him not as an executive titan, but as a broken man, dragged against his will, his empire crumbling around him. His protests shrank to mutters, curses drowned beneath cheers and applause. Guards forced him toward the exit, each step heavier, each tug pulling fragments of arrogance further away. Diners parted like waves, making space not out of respect, but rejection, eyes following his, collapsed with satisfaction. By the time he reached the doorway, sweat-soaked, hair plastered, jacket torn slightly at the seam, his suit was no longer prestige but a symbol of defeat. Amara wiped her cheek with trembling fingers, smearing remnants of tears, then let her hand rest once more upon her belly. She whispered inwardly, soothing the child she carried, promising silently that storms fade, that strength survives. Isaiah leaned closer, whispering reassurance she barely heard over the noise, but she caught enough. "You're safe now." Her lips curved faintly, fragile but true, a smile blooming through exhaustion. Relief carved into her features, dignity returned, heart steadied. The storm outside reflected closure. Waves still rolled, but softer, their fury spent, rhythm steady again against the shore. Thunder lingered only faintly, distant grumbles rather than shattering roars. Rain eased to mist, sliding down tall glass in gentle rivulets rather than violent streaks. The ocean, once chaos, now mirrored healing, its calming rhythm echoing the relief settling inside Amara's chest. Nature aligned with justice again, chaos yielding to peace. Cameras lowered gradually, though many still streamed live, voices, narrating what had just unfolded. Patrons whispered to each other, some hugging strangers, some clasping hands with companions, celebrating not only confrontation, but resolution. The air held warmth, heavy yet hopeful, carrying memory of trauma, yet glowing with victory. It was no longer a restaurant, but a sanctuary, where cruelty had been stripped bare, where unity had risen, where dignity had been returned. Amara looked at the crowd, fragile smile widening slightly as she realized they were not just witnesses, but allies. Faces looked back with compassion, encouragement, and pride. She lifted her hand faintly, not fully waving, but enough to acknowledge their presence. Applause surged once more, softer now but genuine, wrapping her in waves of affirmation. Tears welled again, but this time not from heartbreak. This time, from recognition that she was not alone, that strangers had chosen her side, that her truth had been believed. Isaiah's presence beside her remained solid, a shield against the world. His eyes scanned the room, ensuring safety, reading every movement with a soldier's instinct, but his hand never left her shoulder. He leaned slightly, whispering again, "You're stronger than you know." She nodded faintly, whispering, back, "Because you never let me fall." Their exchange was brief, private, yet powerful, stitching together wounds inflicted moments before. Ethan's final shout echoed faintly from the doorway, incoherent, desperate, swallowed quickly by the storm and cheers. Then the doors slammed shut, cutting him off completely. The hall exhaled, as though the building itself released weight. Silence followed briefly, broken only by waves rolling steadily outside, gentle applause within, and Amara's soft sob. This time one of release. Servers moved cautiously, resetting glasses, replacing toppled silver, yet even they smiled, eyes lingering on Amara with respect. Roses still stood in vases, some petals stained red with spilled wine, yet their fragrance endured, a reminder that beauty survives chaos. Candles flickered, steady now, no longer trembling under tension. The restaurant glowed warm once more, and the atmosphere transformed from battlefield to sanctuary. Amara inhaled deeply, lungs filling thoroughly for the first time that evening. She straightened her back, hand still over her belly, and let dignity return completely. Her fragile smile grew stronger, tears drying into shine. She looked at Isaiah, whispered, "We'll be okay." He answered firmly, "Yes, we will." Together they stood as storm survivors, as family bound unbreakably, as symbols of resilience. The crowd rose gradually, many clapping again, some approaching carefully to offer words of encouragement. A woman touched Amara's hand gently, whispering, "You're not alone." A man nodded at Isaiah, muttering, "That's how family protects." Strangers, united by the moment, became a community, weaving threads of solidarity around her. Phones continued recording, but now voices spoke not of scandal, but of triumph. Online audiences would not only see cruelty, but also justice. Not only humiliation, but also restoration. The storm outside calmed entirely. The ocean now rolled steadily, the skies breaking slightly, the stars faint above the horizon. Closure had arrived, both inside and out. La Sirena hummed with renewed energy, patrons returning to seats, but hearts forever changed. This night would not be forgotten. Not by Amara, Not by Isaiah, not by anyone who had witnessed cruelty fall. Before courage. Amara leaned against her brother briefly, smile fragile yet radiant, whispering once more, "Thank you." He placed his arm around her shoulders, protective still, whispering, "Always." Together they sat in silence, surrounded by applause fading into warm murmur, storm fading into calm tide, pain fading into dignity restored. The fallout was not destruction. It was healing. Humiliation had been dragged out, dignity had been raised, and unity had proven louder than arrogance. And as waves rolled softly beyond glass, as candles glowed steadily across marble, Amara's fragile smile promised a future no storm could erase. The heavy doors of La Serena swung shut, sealing the echo of Ethan's last desperate shouts outside. Security dragged him down the wet stone steps, his polished shoes slipping against rain-slick pavement, suit crumpled, once a symbol of power, now reduced to rags of shame. Flashes from phones followed his exit, light bouncing across soaked fabric, every stumble etched into recordings that would travel beyond these walls. The empire he had built on fear, arrogance, and money crumbled beneath public scrutiny. There was no polished statement, no boardroom ally, no crisis manager who could erase what had been witnessed tonight. His downfall was permanent, carved into collective memory, proof that cruelty paraded openly cannot remain unchallenged. Inside, silence lingered a moment before the hall filled with soft applause once more. It was not thunderous now, but steady, reverent, like waves returning to shore after a storm. Diners clapped gently, not for spectacle but for resolution, their support aimed at Amara and Isaiah, not at the man dragged away. The sound blended with the hush of ocean beyond glass. Steady tide finally calming, rain easing into drizzle that traced slow lines down tall windows. The chaos was over. Peace had returned, fragile yet undeniable. Amara rose slowly from her chair, legs unsteady, hands still trembling, but her spine straightened, shoulders lifted. Tears dried into a sheen across her cheeks, fragile smile breaking through exhaustion. She no longer looked shattered but resilient, dignity glowing even through fatigue. The coral dress clung to her curves, fabric damp with perspiration but radiant under candlelight, a symbol of grace unbroken. One hand remained firmly over her belly, protective still, yet now that gesture carried hope rather than fear. The child inside her had weathered this night, and she stood as proof that love, once defended, cannot be erased by violence. Isaiah moved to her side, his towering frame shielding, his hand steady at her back. Together they faced the crowd, brother and sister, protector and survivor, bound by blood and vows that had survived storms, wars, and heartbreak. His expression softened as he looked at her, eyes proud, relief etched deep. He whispered, "You're safe." Words barely audible yet felt by every heart in the room. She answered softly, "Because you never left." Their exchange, profound, but straightforward, resonated like truth carved into stone. The crowd began to disperse, applause fading into murmurs carried into the night. Some approached to offer quiet encouragement, hands resting briefly on Amara's arm, whispers of admiration slipping into her ears. "You're stronger than you know. We're with you." Strangers united through shared witness left as allies, carrying with them not only memory but conviction. Phones tucked into pockets now carried evidence that justice had risen, that cruelty had been toppled, that dignity had been restored. The storm outside cleared further, sky splitting to reveal faint stars glimmering above Monterey Bay. The sea rolled gently, no longer crashing but steady, reflecting resolution. Waves shimmered under pale moonlight, rhythm calm, echoing the peace returning to Amara's chest. For hours it had mirrored chaos, Now it mirrored closure. Nature itself seemed to acknowledge the arc: conflict, confrontation, resolution, fallout, and now calm. Amara inhaled deeply, lungs filling thoroughly, breath no longer trembling. She felt taller, stronger, not because scars vanished, but because she had faced cruelty, endured humiliation, and risen supported by truth. Her dignity was whole again, rebuilt by courage, by unity, by a brother who refused silence. She looked at Isaiah, her fragile smile turning confident. "We'll move forward," she whispered. He nodded firmly. Together. The hall emptied. Gradually, diners filtering into the night, their voices drifting into drizzle-softened air. Their applause lingered in memory, fading outward like ripples in water, traveling further than walls, carried through every recording that would spread, across screens worldwide. Tonight was no longer confined to Monterey. It would live in conversations, in shares, in posts, in hashtags, in millions of hearts who would watch and feel what had been felt here, that justice, once ignited, spreads beyond boundaries. Candles burned lower, roses drooped slightly, but fragrance endured, soft and sweet. Silver gleamed faintly, crystal shards long cleared, wine stains drying into symbols of memory. The restaurant glowed warm again, a sanctuary reborn from a battlefield, a place where dignity triumphed, where justice was amplified not by courts, but by collective courage. Amara and Isaiah remained near the table, no longer tense but calm, eyes still damp yet steady. She leaned into him, her head resting briefly against his arm, whispering one final truth. "I thought I lost myself tonight, but I found strength instead." He answered with quiet certainty, "Because you fought, and I stood with you." That bond, spoken and unspoken, would remain forever. And now, to every listener, to every viewer, to every heart drawn into this story, the message must be clear. This is not only a tale of one woman, one brother, one night in Monterey. It is a testament to resilience, proof that dignity stripped can be restored, proof that silence shattered can give way to voices unified. It is a call, urgent and undeniable, for everyone who has ever faced humiliation, for everyone who has ever endured cruelty, for everyone who has ever stood alone. You are not powerless. You are not voiceless. You are not forgotten. If you stand against humiliation, drop a red heart, like subscribe, and share this story to amplify justice. Every action spreads light further. Every share strengthens voices. Still trembling, every heart stands as proof that cruelty loses when courage rises. Let this moment not fade into memory, but ripple into action, reminding the world that love defended is stronger than arrogance, that justice spoken is louder than money, that dignity restored is brighter than any storm. Tonight, Ethan was escorted out, his empire shattered under public scrutiny. Tonight, Amara stood taller, supported by Isaiah, her protector, her shield. Tonight, strangers became allies, united by justice. Tonight, the ocean calmed, waves rolling steadily beneath stars, nature echoing closure. And tonight, your voice matters too. Stand with her, stand with them, stand with every soul whose dignity has been threatened. Do not let silence win. Amplify truth, spread resilience, share justice. Because stories like this are not only heard, they are lived, and by standing together, by refusing to bow to cruelty, by amplifying courage, we ensure no one faces storms alone. So act now. If you stand against humiliation, drop a red heart, like, subscribe, and share this story to amplify justice. Let the world know that dignity survives, that justice triumphs, that resilience endures. Together, we create waves stronger than any ocean, storms brighter than any lightning, and a world where love is a shield, justice is a sword, and truth is unbreakable.